Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason, where you're going to learn something new in 90 minutes. Today on the show, we have Jem Young. Jem, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Jason. And I just want to point out, I make no guarantees about learning anything in 90 minutes. He said that, not me.
I love it. Yeah, so before we get started, a couple things. We have live captioning. Remember that you can go to lwj.dev/live. We've got live captioning being done by White Coat Captioning, so thank you very much for that. And thank you to our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, and Sanity all pitching in to help make this show more accessible for everybody. So thank you very much for that. So Jem, for those of us who aren't familiar with your work, actually, I'm going to tell a story first because I met you back in at Perf Matters a couple years back. We both spoke there, and it was such a fun time. I remember just kind of laughing my ass off the whole time. And then I remember from there, I discovered Front End Happy Hour. And Front End Happy Hour is the kind of show that I feel like it's the show that I immediately was like, oh man, how do I do something that fun? And so I actually thought about Front End Happy Hour quite a bit when I was putting together the content plan for Learn with Jason, because I wanted that same kind of like improv-y interactive element. So I get, shout out to you for helping me form this show.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the improv-y, sort of style we're both trying to go with. Ours is more amateur. So we don't actually know what we're doing. 100 episodes in, we still don't know what we're doing. So I'm glad we're still keeping the improv-y vibe, because that's really what we're going for, not because we don't know what we're doing, but we don't. But I appreciate that. I do remember meeting you here in the Bay Area for Perf Matters, and I'm just like, yeah, this is a cool dude. We should do something in the future, and now it's the future, and I'm really glad you're doing this show.
It's the future. Here we are. It's here. It's arrived. Okay, so Front End Happy Hour, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a podcast where the format is brilliant because you've kind of turned it into a great drinking game. Where there's a word that if anybody says that word, you have to take a drink. How's that going now that everybody's in quarantine? You're still doing them remotely, right?
Yeah, still working remotely. I've actually been on paternity leave since January. I came back to work last month, and I don't know if anybody out there has kids, but let me tell you, it's not a lot of fun going into what is a full-time job taking care of a baby back into a full-time job.
Yeah.
Because I think, well, that's not fair. I nothing changed for me, but I just have to do two jobs now. But it's been going really well. The team has good spirits, and fortunately, the nature of the work we do, we're all really fortunate to be software engineers, so
Yeah.
we can work remotely. Well, a lot of people can't.
Yeah, absolutely. So one I feel like I half introduced you. So for those of us who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give a little bit of a background of who you are, what you're doing, all those fun things?
Yeah, like Jason said, thank you. I'm Jem Young. I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix. I work on infrastructure for the growth team. So funny enough, I don't do a lot of UI these days. Mainly what I do is the tedious back end stuff that, having services talk to each other and thinking of ways to keep our infrastructure strong for the next couple of years out, which is, I don't know. It's a discussion we can have as we're coding about what it means to be a senior engineer and kind of the misconceptions of, all we do is code all day, which is not true at all. But that's what I do for fun. What I do for work, no. my own jokes. Just like my wife and my 3.5 months old son, I spend most of the time here laughing at my own jokes because nobody really gets it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the ship may have sailed for your wife, but you got hope for your son. He might age into your humor.
I whisper to him while I sleep, and I'm like, "That's the funny one." But it's true. What I do for fun is probably the same thing everybody else does for fun these days, which is try to keep off the quarantine 15.
Mm-hmm.
not working really well. I just
Mm-mm.
the temptation to snack is it's so strong, Jason. It's so strong. Criticize a lot of Netflix. Been doing that, and recently I got into the Great Canadian Baking Show. I don't know if you're familiar with this universe.
Well, I'm familiar with the British one. Did the Canadian one? I feel like I watched an American like attempt at making a baking show, and they added like laser lights and intense music and drama, and I was like, no, you're missing the entire point of the Great British Baking Show. Did the Canadian one? Did they keep the like we're all nice and we're gonna take care of each other and
Jason, you know they did. You know Canadians
I
represent for Canadians and Americans. Yeah, yeah.
I had I mean, I had hopes, right? Like I want to believe.
I've never seen the American one. I've heard stories that we also have attempted a baking show. For those of you who don't know and are buried under a rock, the Great British Baking Show is one of the most popular shows in Britain. It actually is one of the more popular shows in the world. And it's just a series of, I want to say 12 contestants.
Mm-hmm.
And they have 3 challenges issued by these master bakers. So every week there's amateur bakers competing to build these like pretty much phenomenal works of pastry and cakes and things like that. But the thing is, it's a competition, but it's not competitive. It's really wholesome and you feel good after watching it.
Yeah.
So apparently what Jason's referring to is that there was supposed to be an American version of this. But because our natural American competitiveness, sorry, I haven't seen it. Jason.
Well, it's like American reality TV has this thing where like we can't make a TV show like the reality formula in America is too much like, oh, we need drama and undercutting and like, focus on all the bad things and the smack talk as opposed to, hey, let's see people who are really good at a thing building a thing and like being nice to each other while they do it, which is I think is what makes the Great British Baking Show such a good show. Is that sense of like these are people who have a lot of skill, they are like pleasant, they're nice to each other, they help each other, and they're all just trying to like make a thing. And like it's a competition, they obviously want to win, but it's never like I want to win at all costs. It's like I would like to have a great time and hopefully I win, which I feel like is something that we've lost sight of a little bit in reality television.
Yeah, no, you summed it up precisely. I don't know. Sometimes I start watching American television and I'm like, life isn't this zero-sum game where one half has to win and the other half has to lose.
Oh my
like,
God.
We can all win. And that's what I love about the Great British Baking Show is because it's just like this idea that you push yourself as hard as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you get to the end, usually you're like, these people are just better than me. I've worked as hard as I can and they're just better than me. And that's okay. Like I found out what my strengths are and how far I can go. That's usually what happens. Like you kind of see the mental process working.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting too deep into it.
Well, I also think like one of the things that I think is most telling about that show is that they do like after they air the final episode, the end is a montage of like the contestants continuing to be friends months and years after the show aired. And I'm like, God, that is awesome that like these people are forming like lifelong friendships, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We might need to focus up here. Like I can talk about this all day. Chris, thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it. Before we talk code, we have one request from the chat. Is your cat within arm's reach?
No.
Oh, well,
he knows, like he's pretty useless most of the time, but his one superpower is knowing that when I'm going to go pick him up. So he'll be sleeping and he'll be like, Jeb's coming. Like, no, I have no chance. I might be able to catch my baby, maybe, but I guarantee nothing.
Yeah, there was a good discussion of your cat's laser eyes, and I think everybody wants a demonstration. Okay,
that was my wife. She put that all together.
Oh, really? That's amazing. It's so good.
But the outfit, just so you know, is real. That was not photoshopped. I own that outfit. So,
Yeah, nailed it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit of code. Let's make sure that we don't completely go off the rails here.
Do we have to? Rather argue about baking.
Yeah. I really could. But so let's talk a little bit about we're going to do some service worker stuff today. So what what is the big idea behind service workers?
You tell me, Jason. You tell me. No, you have no idea what I'm doing. No. So there's a few basic types of server. Actually, no. Let's step way back. JavaScript is single threaded.
Yes.
Everybody knows that. Everybody in chat knows that. Of course you do. That means if you do something that takes a long operation, the entire UI is going to freeze. Everything's going to freeze because everything's running on this one single thread on your processor. So years ago, somebody, I forget who, we'll say the internet gods invented the idea of a worker. And a worker is a separate thread you can spin off. It
Mhm.
doesn't do UI, so it has no access to the DOM. You can't do any sort of creative rendering in there. Well, you could, but you don't do any rendering in that generally. I need to like preface everything with the asterisk. Like you could, you probably won't, and you probably shouldn't, but you could because we're engineers. But generally, has no access to the DOM, doesn't know what it is, but it's for running long computational processes. That's
Okay.
there's also such thing as an audio worker, which most people don't need to know about. But later, a few years ago, the internet gods invented the idea of a service worker, and that is a worker, but it has the unique ability to intercept network requests.
Mhm.
Also, it actually has several unique abilities, but what it is, it's a separate worker. It can intercept network requests. It can be used to cache things offline. It can be used to do background push notifications. So if you've ever
Mhm.
gotten a notification and your browser's closed, that is a service worker. So the long and short is it's an on-demand worker. It only exists when it's running and it's persistent. So it's always in your browser unless someone uninstalls it for you.
Cool. Yeah, and that actually the like always present in your browser unless it gets uninstalled is actually I think one of the things that makes service workers so intimidating. I've seen like there are huge threads on Stack Overflow dedicated to how do I uninstall a service worker. And when I used to work at Gatsby, we for a while we would make sites offline first by default. We would automatically install a service worker and make it so that when you shipped your site, it was offline compatible. But we had so many problems that we actually had to reverse that and publish a plugin for Gatsby that would uninstall a service worker because it like has such a potential to be a foot gun. And so have you hit this? Like, do you have any like any personal scars? Because I have personal scars. I borked my whole site once.
Yes, I have also broken my site because when you have something, I'll just say like the easy route to doing this is you have a worker that runs on a separate thread. It's persistent. So you install it once, you can cache your entire site, which is what most new people do is they take their site, they're like, oh, I'm going to make it all so it works offline. Good idea. The problem is they don't install the mechanisms to update that service worker once they get going.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is you load the site, it caches the entire site. So like Jason Langdorf is awesome.com. Cool, it's all cached. You push an update, nobody can get it because you didn't put in that mechanism to manually refresh that cache and pull the new data. So like
Yep.
you're refreshing the page and nothing. And like unless someone's a engineer, they're never going to be able to uninstall the service worker.
Even
Then it
as an engineer, I feel like that was something that I learned literally months after I had broken my first service worker was how to delete a service worker manually. It was a rough. Like I was opening incognito windows. Like my workflow was terrible.
I love you as an incognito because like it's so sneaky, and you're
Yes.
like, why is this not working? And it could be like dozens of things, but what it is, it's sitting there on the client, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, Chrome DevTools and a lot of DevTools have come a long way.
Yes.
We, and by we I mean me, I underestimate the effective tooling that we have on this environment. So like people working on service workers have done so much better work now because the tooling's there. It shows you when it's installing, how to kill it, how to refresh it, all these sort of things that when they first came out, we didn't have. So you're just like guessing. And I was
Mm-hmm.
deep into the archives of the internet because service workers were so new that nobody knew what they were doing. And it was, yeah,
Yeah.
they are dangerous if you let them get out of hand.
Yeah, for sure. And so we've got a couple questions in the chat. So what? So it's like an Android app for your browser, but without an app store. Um, Sort of like you can use it for that. Like you can do the web apps. It's a portion of that. Like offline support is part of making a full like offline first progressive web app. You also have to use stuff that has nothing to do with service workers, like a manifest and some other things like that. The other one is sort of like an orchestrator router. It can be like you can use it as a proxy. You can use it as a you can use it as a lot. We should. It might make more sense to just start playing with this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's switch over into code mode.
Oh wait, we had a code. Oh crap! I thought we were just gonna talk about baking.
And
All
just
right,
as
fine.
just as a reminder, this is the lwj.dev/live. If you want to go and look at the captions, so remember those are available. Thank you again to Fauna, Netlify, and Sanity for sponsoring that. And with that, let's see. This is Jem on Twitter. You should go follow if you were not aware what we were talking about with the laser eyes cats. That is what we were talking about. This amazing, so good. Also, I just now for the first time realized that this is a ramen packet pair of pants. Like when you said that you had not photoshopped the outfit, I was like, I don't remember the outfit being that ridiculous. I was so distracted by the laser cat that I didn't even notice the ramen packet.
And the ramen noodle shirt.
It's good. This is
I
really
had a
good.
whole. Thank you. I had a whole bit. This is my Halloween costume 2 years running. I've never worn it because of circumstances. Last year I was filming Front End Masters, my full stack for front end course. So Miss Halloween year before, I feel like I was out of the country. So I've had this Halloween outfit for 2 years. I've never been able to show it. So I was like, well, I might as well. But I've got the pants, I've got the top, and I've got the ramen noodle shirt. So like I was gonna walk to the office, like unzip the ramen noodle, and it's gonna be like the ramen noodle packet underneath. I had a whole thing. It was gonna be sweet, but
that's amazing. Okay. So what we're doing today is we've set up a VS Code live share instance, and we are going to just build out a little site, I think, right?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay. So all I've done thus far is I created an index.html, but it's empty.
That works. We will need a few tools. We don't need them, but I feel comfortable doing them. But
okay.
We'll get there when we get there. So I'm a slow typist, so I'll get you to do this part because I'm lazy and I'm a slow typist. So let's create just a empty HTML page. So just HTML, perfect. You know what they say, to make something from scratch, you have to first invent the universe. So let's invent the universe here. All right, I think I'm gonna jump in here. Script.
I broke this a little bit. Let me move this body tag down. Okay, go ahead.
It's all good. It's gonna bother me, but
what is happening?
I'm trying to line it up.
What is it doing?
Wait, okay. Okay, I think we're good now. All right, let's go ahead and if you would, let's make a worker file. So let's make a worker.js.
Okay, so I've never seen it called worker.js. Now, so this is actually something that's worth calling out. Two things. One, does it matter what it's named? And two, does it matter where it is?
It doesn't matter where it's named. It does matter where it is. I don't think we're going to get too much in the controlling scope for a service worker. This time we're just building a web worker. I want to build a really quick example to show people why we need workers, because it's one of those things that's not apparently clear when you're first starting out. At least for me, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, wait, but JavaScript works and everything I do works in React, Angular, Vue. It all works in this one thread. Why do we need a worker? And let's just build out a quick example to say, this is actually why we need a worker.
Yeah.
So you made a worker.js. That's just a separate file next to index.html. So I'm going to make Actually, I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna make a button. Cool. I'm gonna say on click. Give it a click handler. I don't know, clicked. Just a function. And then I'm going to give you a function called clicked. It's not going to do anything. It's going to console log button clicked.
Okay.
All right, nothing special. So if you would you fire off a quick server?
Yeah.
Or fire up a quick server and we can just load this up?
Let's do it. I think we can even share a terminal session. So let's just npx serve.
Oh, nice. Oh, I was going to use Python simple server, but that's much fancier.
I mean, this is just nice and fast. It's pretty painless. Let me get this open in the right browser. Oh my god. There we go. All right, let's add some text to our button. Okay, so then if we open up the console and I close that, there we go.
Nice. We are JavaScript wizards. We just stopped the episode now.
We've done it. I'm feeling, I feel like I'm ready to go take my whiteboard interview at a FANG company.
I'm thinking our valuation could be somewhere in the billions, maybe trillions for this one. No, so all right, so we have this basic HTML page with a button. You click it, it says console. We're all pretty familiar. Now let us examine the pitfalls of why single threading is not necessarily the ideal case. So I'm just going to create a let I equal 0, and I'm going to create a while loop. So I'm going to say while I is less than 1 to 8 zeros. Pretty big number. Don't want to go too big because I'll be stuck in this example. And I can say console.log done. If anybody's like, what? It's not going to work. Remember, while loops are synchronous. So while it's running, it'll never get to the line below. And we just saved that. And if you want to go ahead and refresh that page, it's probably going to be too fast. So
it is too fast, yeah.
I'm going to make that one IE 9 zeros.
Okay.
Let's give that a shot.
That's better. Yeah. Okay.
So while it's loading, I don't want to go to 10 zeros because, funny enough, this is logarithmic. So it might take 10 seconds now to add another zero, and it's going to be like a million seconds or something. But if you're refreshing the page, you're clicking the button, nothing's going to show up because that while loop is still running. So you're clicking, you're clicking.
And they queued too. So like 1, 2, 3, and it queues, and I get 3 clicks at the end, which is this is actually a brilliant demonstration of when you're trying to do performance on web page and they talk about first input delay. This is like the interactivity of the page is blocked by JavaScript. We did too much work in our JavaScript, and that prevents the person actually loading the page from doing things on it. And we were able to do that with 5 lines of JavaScript. So, just keeping in mind, it is not hard to make an app slow.
Exactly. It's trivial, really. And this is a very straightforward example. Most of the times, synchronous calls that are blocking our app, we don't know about. For instance, JSON.parse is a synchronous action. So if you're like, oh, I just download my payload from the web and down blah, 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 when it gets that giant payload and it's parsing it, your UI is locked. A lot of people don't know that. So in general, yeah, you probably won't see something as clear as a while loop as your main performance regression, but the idea stands. All right, so this is bad. This could be any use case. You could be building a graph, processing audio, processing video, something is blocking your UI. It's terrible user experience because without the console, a user doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
So let's offload this work. So I'm just gonna, finger quotes work. Let's offload this work into a worker. So I'm gonna actually, I'll just let you do it. Go ahead and copy the work into the worker.js.
Okay, there's my work in the worker.
And go ahead and copy the console log too, just so we know.
Oh yeah, good call.
Yeah, we can save that. And then back in index.html, we can delete that out.
Okay. So now if we come out here, obviously we're not doing the work. Like it never happens.
Yeah, great point. We still need to load. We need to tell the DOM that, hey, we've got a regular web worker to load up, and then let's do some work on that. So a const worker equals new worker, not too elaborate. And depending on how URLs are structured, we can just say worker.js. Oops, SJ. So now if we try our example again,
okay,
we should be able to click the button while the calculation is running in the background.
Oh, that is beautiful. Look at it. So that, I mean, that's powerful stuff, because what we just did was almost nothing in terms of work. Like the effort for us to move that off to a worker was minimal. But the impact was huge.
Yeah, well put. Exactly. I just love this example because it shows, hey, here's what being a single-threaded programming language or environment does to you. But here's how we can mitigate that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, some people are. Oh, sorry. You look like you're about to go on like a good point.
Well, there was just a question about whether this was a normal worker and not a service worker. So this is what you would call like a web worker if you were looking for the spec, right?
Yes, this is a normal vanilla worker, web worker. Probably should specify web worker. There are many different, or there's several different types. And so right now, if you've never seen this before, seen an example like this, you're like, what can I offload to my worker now? And I can just make my entire app faster. The reason why we don't just offload everything to the worker and make the UI as responsive as humanly possible is because we communicate with the worker using message passing back and forth. So that generally means we have to serialize the message. The worker gets it, unserializes it, says, oh, okay, they want us to do this. Okay. We pass that back to the main thread or the UI thread, if you will. That's actually really expensive, which is why you don't see more web workers just passing data back and forth, and all of our modern apps are running web workers.
Oh, Jackie. Oh, it's about to get noisy. Sorry. Jackie, thank you so much. He just gifted out 10 subscriptions, so we're going to get 10 new subs. And so to everyone who just got your sub, remember, you are perfectly capable of burying us in the boop emoji. So make sure that you take full advantage of the boop. Don't forget to drop those boops. Are we done? Did we get it? No? Oh, it's still going. How many?
My beard looks.
Oh, all right. Okay. Here we go. Oh, Jackie, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That is wonderful. I think we're almost done here.
I don't know a lot about the Twitch universe, Twitchverse, but I hear gifting subscriptions is a really nice thing to do.
It very much is. It's a good way to, like, you support the streamer. You let other people who are watching kind of take part in the emote fun, because, like, these emotes are only available if you're a subscriber. So it tends to be a nice fun way to like spread the love around in the community, which I've always very much appreciated.
Way to go, Jackie.
And now we're not going to be able to see what we're working on because we're going to be covered in boops, but that's okay. We're going to keep on pushing.
Nobody is here to see us code. They're here for our pithy baking commentary. So, as I was saying about pies, let me list the favorites. No. So that was a
oh my god. Oh jeez. Okay, we're in full chaos mode now. No, this is good. This is wonderful.
So, I feel like my grandma, when I set up Netflix for her, she's like, "What's happening?" That's how I feel right now.
So yes, all right. Thank you all so much for playing along today. This is super fun. Jackie, thank you again. All right, so we've built this. We were talking about workers, so we've got a standard web worker, And you were saying that the reason that we don't just offload everything is because communication between the main thread and worker threads is expensive.
Exactly.
Okay.
There are, working in a single thread environment, there are more efficient ways to queue up work. One of the ways we do that is using request animation frame, which is going to be called roughly every 16 or so milliseconds as a way of do some work. And then when you're done, move on. So you can do work in chunks. I'd say 99% of people don't do massive amounts of single threaded work. We've gotten conditioned not to do that anymore, just lint rules and things like that. But there are cases for, like I said, processing video or audio or, I don't know, like a real time anything. You can use a web worker, and they're good to know. Oh, nice. So I can just say random JavaScript concepts, and you'll look them up.
Yeah, got to have those show notes.
Did you get baking shows yet in the show notes?
Oh no, need that.
Come on, man! Like this one.
Here we go. Great British Baking Show. Is it on? I guess we'll put the Wikipedia page. We'll be platform agnostic.
Don't forget the Great Canadian Bake Off as well.
Great Canadian Baking Show.
It's so delightful if you get to see it.
Oh, I love it. So this is actually the same cinematic universe. Like this is the same production company.
Yes. This is an aside, but have you happened to seen the show Schitt's Creek?
Oh yeah.
So you know the main character David.
Yeah.
He is one of the hosts on the Great Canadian.
Oh my god. Show. Okay. All right. I'm in. We're gonna watch this today. This is the rest of my Memorial Day. It's like I'm gonna just binge through this whole show.
And I have to say, he's one of the best hosts because he actually goes around like eating everybody's food. He'll be like, "Oh, is this extra? Oh, don't mind if I do. Oh, don't mind if I." And it's hilarious because you're like, "That's what we would do if we were on a baking show." And you're like, "Oh,
yep.
Did you make an extra pie for me?" Anyways,
all right,
back to code.
So, all right, so we've got a worker, and so a worker is probably not the first tool you should reach for, but there are great reasons why you would. Service workers are a specialized kind of worker, and so if we are going to kind of play here, how would you want to go about that? Like, what should we do first?
Let's create another file. We can make a service worker inline, but I generally find it cleaner to make a separate file. So let's call it sw.js. That's what I name all my service workers. Easy to remember. All right. So now, just like our first example, we need to find a way to get the DOM to say like, "Hey, there's a service worker, and let's load it up." So I'm going to grab this. I'll leave the clicked in there. We don't really need it, but I'm going to say navigator dot service worker, and the first thing we need to do is register a service worker because it's best to think of a service worker as it's a web worker, but it's also an event-driven proxy, which I tend not to use that definition a lot because it's just throwing a bunch of words at you. But essentially, it's a worker that can listen for certain events. It will spin up in activation to those events and then spin back down. I guess a good example. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I like the definition of a proxy because, like, a proxy, if you think about like what you're doing with the service worker is you're adding a step in between what somebody asks for and what they get. You're basically, it's kind of like if you ordered a delivery, if you are at the restaurant and you watch somebody cook your food, they're going to give it to you directly, right? But if you order delivery, then the delivery driver is going to take that food for you. And they might, like, if you're using something like Postmates, they might like add some paper silverware, or like, they'll get some extra sauces for you and stuff that maybe wouldn't happen otherwise. Or if you've got an evil delivery driver, they could swap your food out and bring you the wrong thing. And so, like that's sort of what you're able to do with a service worker is we're basically able to say like, oh, you asked for this page. Here's what I'm going to give you. And it may or may not be the thing that you asked for.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That's exactly right. That's the hidden danger of the service worker is it can be doing all these things in the background and you'll never know it. You'll never even know it was installed.
Yeah. The chat is saying the takeaway is to not register an evil service worker. You're correct. No evil service workers.
Only good stuff. I love service workers because with JavaScript and with JavaScript and the DOM, we're creating UIs. Cool. We control the UI. We control the DOM. With a service worker, we can control the network as well, which is one of my favorite things and totally underrated because at some point you're building a web page, got to talk to the network. We can do all sorts of fun stuff. But let's get the service worker registered, and then we'll talk more about the things we're going to break, which is many, many things. So I've got Navigator, which is just window.navigator, but I dropped the window. Dot service worker, which service worker is this global scoped object. So I'm going to say register. And I'm just going to call /sw.js. That's it. I can comment that out too. And that's all it takes right now to register our service worker.
Okay. So
a lot of people,
save this. Like, this is theoretically functional, right? Like, where would I go if I want to see if my service worker is working? Because it kind of doesn't show. It shouldn't show anything once we initially hook it up.
Yeah, right there in application. I saw your mouse hover with it, but I appreciate you giving me the ball for this one. Yeah, and you just click on service worker. This is in your Chrome Dev Console under application, service worker. And what do you know? It says it's up and running.
So we can see here's our service worker. We can update it, unregister it. We can choose to bypass it. We can simulate being offline. Like, these tools are, if you're going to start playing with service workers, remember where this is, because this is your lifeline. When you inevitably break it, if you don't know where this tab is, you're just going to have to buy a new computer to be able to do your next run of the service worker. So it's like, this is the less expensive approach.
Just throw out your computer now if you screw yourself. Or switch browsers, which I had to do before. Back when I didn't know what service workers was, I would just switch to Firefox or switch to Safari because I was like, next.
I've also done that.
Don't judge us, internet. Don't judge us till you've been there.
The chat's not even paying attention. They're debating whether or not cookies are a sandwich. 2 cookies on top of each other is a sandwich.
Wait, something had to be in the middle for it to be a sandwich, though.
3rd cookie.
Ooh, I don't know. Would you call 3 slices of stacked bread a sandwich?
I mean, that's a club sandwich.
3 slices of just plain bread stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the sandwich I would want, but if you take a club sandwich and you just hold most of the ingredients, that's what you're getting.
I like how you stick to your guns, Jason. You're like, no, this is what a sandwich is.
I have a unified theory of food. I think that everything breaks down into one of 3 categories. Everything is either a soup, a salad, or a sandwich. Like, not all of them are soup, salad, or sandwiches that you want to eat, but they do fit into that general definition. You're so upset right now.
No. I feel like we could debate this one for a while.
Yeah.
But I have no concrete examples right now. So, yes, I'll agree with you. Because I don't have the wherewithal to debate this one.
Did I show you? So I've had this this just kind of like long running shit talking battle with Sarah Drasner about sandwiches, because she is hoity toity and believes that sandwiches need to have like rules, and I believe that just about anything can be a sandwich. And so I made this site to troll her. I think this is my finest work. It was also a really good lesson in like, you know, when you have, so Sarah's my manager. So when you troll your manager, you kind of have to know how your manager works so that you like don't get yourself accidentally put on a performance improvement plan or, you know, those sorts of things. So I made sure to hardware accelerate that animation, because I knew that as soon as she saw this, she wasn't going to look at the content. She was going to code review it.
Sarah is super smart, wicked smart, as they say in Boston.
Indeed.
Wicked smart.
Indeed.
Yeah, she absolutely would do that. Wait, didn't she make a site called like, is it a sandwich?
Yeah, that's how this came about. So she made, it was like, is this a sandwich.netlify.app? And it's a like just a completely incorrect assessment of what a sandwich is. And later, we were arguing about what counts as a sandwich, and she tried to submit this as evidence. And I was like, you can't use your own website to support your argument. So I built this one to support my argument.
I like your arguments and your battles here. It's kind of like, just go on Wikipedia and make your own page. Be like, yeah, see, it says so on Wikipedia.
Exactly, right? Like, it's on the internet. It has to be true. Okay. All right, we should probably actually write a service worker on this episode. Okay.
Hey, we hit the code.
We wrote some code.
Yeah, that's good enough. Everybody in the chat, you got it, right? Yeah, they got it. So what were we saying about sandwiches? No.
All right, here we go.
All right, let's do something with the service worker. All right, so the service worker is up and running. There's nothing in sw.js. So let's put something in there. Normally I put a console log, like hello world or something like that.
Okay.
But as you demonstrated with the Chrome DevTools, we can see that's running. But yeah, let's throw it in there anyways. Like, hello. Wow. This is good code. This is.
Hey, there we go. It's registered.
Man. Funny enough, go to your application tab. Just go back to that service worker, see what's happening. So we see that the service worker we installed first, which we can call it V1. They don't actually have versions that you can see, but we'll call it V1. That was just an empty file. When you made V2, which said console hyphen service worker, the original service worker is still listening for events.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what we said earlier about it being an event-driven proxy? So if you have any event in JavaScript, there has to be a listener for it to do anything. That service worker V1 is the listener, and right now it's controlling the entire scope. Yes. So any requests or anything we're trying to do are not going to hit our new service worker because we have to tell the new service worker and the old service worker, like, hey, actually, we got a new version coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Stop what you're doing, wrap up your work, and then let the other one take over. This is, what if you'd have top tips or something? J&J's top tips. Make sure you handle this use case because you'll be working in service workers, and forget that the original one hasn't taken over yet. You're like, why is my app not working?
Mm-hmm.
You can force it to work using the update and things like that, or you can stop and skip waiting, all these things. But again, if you're a user, you're not going to know about these things.
Right.
Actually, while you're in there, fun tip. Scroll down on the left panel. Actually, yes. I want to show people how many service workers are actually running in their browser right now. Where is that?
I think it's down here. Service workers from other origins.
Just give that a scroll. Look how many service workers are running just from casual browsing of the internet. And most people, actually, I won't say most people, nobody even knows they're working, because if the service worker is doing its job correctly, you'll never even know it's installed and doing things in the background.
Yeah. Well, and that's really the whole goal, right? Is you want stuff to just function. And so, on Code Sandbox, I don't know what they're doing in the background, but presumably they're doing things that make my experience more stable, less laggy. They're trying to make things feel snappy. And that is, that's great. And I haven't noticed that when I go to Code Sandbox that I need to reload the page or whatever to get things to work. At least not unless I've broken the code. So that tends to be that's a great use of a service worker. They've improved my experience completely transparently. I have no visibility or awareness that they've done this. It just kind of made my life a little bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. And well put, the case for service workers. To quote Futurama, if you do things correctly, people won't know you've done anything at all. And that should be the idea behind a good worker. It should help the user experience, but not degrade it or give them a really frustrating experience, which is really trivial to do. But so let's dig into the service worker a bit. Let's do some code. Let's make it do something other than just print a log.
Okay.
What do I want to do today? You know what I want to do? I got to tell you, can I confess something to you, Jason?
Please do.
Someone the other day, they sent me a really hateful kind of a meme about myself.
Oh.
They said it was just a picture of me, and it said, "Jem is just an okay engineer," and I like that.
right
That
to the
hurt.
heart.
Yeah, just call me an okay engineer. That's not true at all. I'm a terrible engineer. I'm the worst engineer on my team. Like I break stuff all the time, like constantly. I don't know how Netflix is up and running because I've been working there for like 4 years, and I'm just breaking stuff all the time. Fortunately, there's a whole team of people there whose job is to keep the server up, like pretty much fighting me the entire way. But because I'm just an okay engineer, according to some random internet commenter, I do break stuff. I break a lot of stuff. So what I want to do is I want to build a page that tells the user that, like, hey, either your internet's down or the service is down, which happens fairly frequently. Okay. So I want to build an offline status page.
Perfect.
And I know what you're thinking. Wait, if my internet's out or the server's out, how is the status page going to show up? Normally, it'll just be an empty blank screen or a dinosaur hopping or something like that.
Yep.
But with the service worker, we can create a page that will show up if the internet's out or it can't connect to the network or things like that. Exactly.
Right, so this is the power, right? You get this offline button, so I don't have to actually go offline to see what that looks like.
Exactly. And shout out to Chrome Dev Tools, Adi Asmani, that whole team. Good. They're rocking out there. But we can build a service worker that'll serve us an offline status page, which we can build out.
All right.
So to get started, I'm going to build out some of the scaffolding that I usually start most things.
Okay.
Because the service worker is event driven, we want to list a certain events. So I'm going to say self.uninstall. There are a few ways to do this. You can also do add event listener.
Oh, that's helpful. Thanks, computer.
Yeah, thanks, autocomplete. I don't even know what that's from.
Who knows?
Whatever. I'm going to set that equal to some function. And like all events, it's going to pass in an event object, just like in normal JavaScript. So that's the install event. And then where most of the work is going to happen is the fetch event. So I'm going to say self on fetch function also takes an event. All right. So right now our service worker is only listening to 2 events. The install event, that's after the service worker gets installed, downloaded, and it starts to get installed. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, I'm about to boot up. What should I do? We'll fill that out in a second. The second one is the fetch event. So all network requests, once the service worker is running, will flow through this event handler. Mm-hmm. So right now, since it's empty, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to transparently proxy everything through. But we can grab the requests as they're going through and then do all sorts of fun stuff with them. So that's the 2 main parts we're going to work with today. Actually, so before I get to the install, I'm going to add in some boilerplate here. Okay. First thing I'm going to add in is no. I'll jump back to the boilerplate. But I'm going to say this. Eventually, we're storing files in a cache, and I'll jump back to this. Don't worry. Test. The best of all days. No. Foo. I'm kidding. Do not name your variables foo. Test. Even better. Even
better. And at least it communicates something in human language.
You mean foo doesn't tell you all my intents and purposes, hopes and dreams of the variable? Weird. And I'm just going to give you an empty array for now. Someone just do something?
They want us to call it boop.
Just for you, I want to call it boop.
Excellent.
Even more useful. All right. So our install event, the service worker downloaded, and it's just waiting right now. So what we want to do first is when the service worker loads up, we want to pull in this offline file. So it's going to be something like offline.html, this offline status page. We want to save it to the web cache. And then once that's done, we want to say, hey, the service worker is ready to go. Mm-hmm. But we don't want the service worker to actually take over any work until this work is done. Okay. So kind of pre-work. So we can say exactly that. We'll say event, take that event that's passed in, wait until, and that's just a function that we're going to pass something. So what do we want to do next? We want to open the web cache. Do you know about web cache? I mean, of course you do. You're Jason Langsdorff. You know about web cache.
So it's been a long time since I've looked at it. So remind me, and for anybody who's not familiar, let's talk through it. Let's pretend like I don't, because honestly, I would have to Google it right now because I really don't, I like can't remember how it works at all.
I look up most of this stuff, and if anybody's saying like, "Wow, this is a lot of weird lexicon and different language that I'm used to working in JavaScript," don't feel bad. Once you get kind of boilerplate for a service worker, you don't have to touch it too much. You're generally going to use these events to put some other function in, and then we're going to call that function to do work.
Yeah.
So I know when you're first looking at this stuff, it's really intimidating because it's just things you've never seen before. But have no fear. You do this once or twice, or you look stuff up like I do. I look up everything all the time, especially CSS. I'm the worst in CSS.
I think you talked about like you're a senior engineer. I'm a senior engineer, and I think that like as I've progressed in my career, I don't feel like I've gotten more things in my head. I feel like I've learned more of the right way to search for answers. Like I don't know more stuff. I know where to look to find the stuff, and I feel like that's something that that maybe doesn't get communicated clearly about becoming senior. It's not about memorizing the whole internet. It's about learning where the connections are so you know where to look.
Well put. And maybe if we actually finish this thing, we can have a deeper discussion on that, because it's something that's worth talking about. Like
I agree.
I think people say like, "Oh, Jason Langdor, you're a senior engineer. You must be a master coder who knows everything, like see veracity is backwards and knows the big O runtime of every algorithm ever." And like, that's probably not true. We look stuff up, just same as you. Depending on Stack Overflow, it's depending on people's blogs.
Mm-hmm.
I think where it matters is you'll get to a point where you get to some nuanced problem that you can't look up. It's something specific to your case. That's probably one of the bigger differences between a senior engineer and a junior engineer is, what do you do when you can't look up stuff anymore? Where you actually have to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways,
that's like now I'm gonna have to come on your show and we're just gonna like talk about this. Like that'd be so good.
I would love to.
All right, you heard it here first. It's happening.
It's happening. Friday happy hours are filmed at night with many beverages. So
I'm so into it. I have like this whole liquor cabinet that I've been like not using at all because I usually don't drink alone. I'm a very social drinker, so like having an excuse to get in there will be great.
We don't need an excuse, but we have a podcast to do that for us. All right. No, we're talking about web cache. So
yes,
web cache is a persistent storage mechanism. And if you're thinking, wait, I already have local storage, I already have IndexedDB, I have cookies. There are lots of ways to store things on the browser. Web cache is just one of them. It's probably one of the newer ways of doing it. It's more persistent than, I shouldn't say more persistent. No, well, I'll say it's more persistent than local storage for a bit. Don't at me on Twitter. It's a long thing. But we're going to use the web cache to store something. In this case, we're going to store an actual file that we can access it later much easier. And that's probably one of the bigger differences between that and other storage mechanisms is you can just take a file and you don't have to parse it and encode it or anything like that. So the way I'm going to do that is first I need to open the cache. So I'm going to say caches. It's nice, window.caches.
Okay.
I'm going to say open. And I'm going to say that cache name I said earlier. What will get you on this is all of this is asynchronous. So because this is asynchronous and we're not using async await or anything like that, we could, but I'm going to do this old school. So I'm going to say caches. I have to wait for it to open. I'm going to say then function. So now my cache is open. Now that I'm going to grab it via the cache that's passed in. And I'm just going to return the cache.
Okay.
I'm going to say cache dot add all, and I'm going to give it this files. So what we're doing there is the service worker comes in, it's getting installed. We say like, hey, don't tell the browser that you're ready yet until you open the cache. You get the cache, and then you add all the files that you want into this cache. So we're just
Yeah.
making sure that like immediately the service worker is able to handle things offline. So we can give it any files. So I'm going to give it, I don't know, offline.html. Very clever. Perfect. And thanks for making that for me.
Just continuing with your
Oh, that's good. I was going to make like a fancy. No, I wasn't. I'm terrible at styling things. That is accurate. That is perfect. And that's our install event.
Okay.
We will come back to this. I'm gonna leave this line open for later. Later with a winky face. There we go. We'll come back to this install event. But for now, you know that when your service worker is ready, it has already loaded up all the files that it needs and it's ready to go. So now let's jump into the fetch event. So right now the service worker isn't doing anything. It's just installing and then it's kind of hanging out. What we need to do is we want to intercept all the fetch events going out, determine if we're offline or not. And then if we're offline, we want to serve the offline.html from the cache.
Okay.
All right. So first thing let's do, let's grab the request off the event. So we'll say const request equals event.request. Cool. So now we have the actual request. Funny thing, a lot of people don't know, request is a type of object in JavaScript. A lot of people don't know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. You can say a new request and give us some H2. But what we get from this is not just some random variable. The fact that it's an object means that we can grab the method off it. So I'm going to say, just for this example, I can say request.method equals get. So we're being safe here. We only want to return a service status outage or offline page for get requests. We don't want to mess with post requests. That can get a little tricky. You might lose data. There are better ways of handling this. So we're explicitly saying just for get requests where there's nothing at stake. And I call this out specifically because developers will forget it and forget like, hey, I just spent 30 minutes writing up this email or something, and I hit send, and it just lost all my data because you intercepted it and you just returned a service page. Versus if you're offline, it'll say like, hey, you want to resend this data, other things like that. It's important to remember that the user, like ultimately we're trying to make this better for the user, not just silly experiments.
Yeah.
Well, right now it's a silly experiment. So we're going to say like only for GET requests. What do we want to do then? So remember, these are event listeners. So that means everything eventually has to respond with the event listener. So I'm going to say event, just like it sounds, respond with.
Okay.
That means at some point, once this event listener is done, it's going to say something. It's either going to say like, hey, I made your network request and came back, you're all good, or I'm just going to deny you getting anything. We can do whatever we want at this point, but that's what event.respond with does. This is a good time to take a break and talk about my favorite cake, the Swedish princess cake. It is a round marzipan-covered dome. It's green. It's covered by, it's got a little cherry on top sometimes, and it's some raspberry frosting. But inside, it's raspberry frosting, or raspberry jam frosting, cake frosting. And then it's covered in whipped cream, and then you put a marzipan dome all around it. One of my favorite cakes of all time.
Have you ever actually eaten one of those?
I have. I live in San Francisco, so we have a grocery chain called Safeway, and it turns out this grocery chain sells princess cakes.
Is it actually good? That seems like it's too much.
The Safeway version it's not great, but it's better than making it on my own.
That's fair. So. Yeah. I mean, I think they're beautiful. Like I saw the episode of the Great British Baking Show where they made those, and like the ones that bakers made didn't come out great, but the one that they showed off, like that thing was gorgeous. It was an aspirational cake.
Isn't that the where Nailed It came from? That show on Netflix where people see pictures of things on Instagram and then they're like, that should be achievable. I'm a smart person. And then it turns out horribly. And then they made a whole show about that.
I just had one of these moments. I have a friend, Leslie. She was on the show a little bit ago, and she's a designer, but she also used to be a professional baker. And so for my partner's birthday last year, she made this amazing. It's like a really simple American style yellow butter cake, and then she made a chocolate frosting, and it was just this beautiful fluffy cake, just like perfectly executed. And I was like, we're in quarantine this year. You know, my partner's birthday was last week. So I was like, I want to do something nice for her. She loved that cake. Maybe it's not a very, like, it's a plain butter cake. Maybe if I get the recipe, I can do this. And so she sent me her recipe, and I tried my little heart out, but it was not great. Let me see if I can find, I'm going to find the photo of this. But the reason I bring this up is because I did the nailed it thing because of how poorly my cake came out. Yeah, here it is. Let me pull this.
I like that people in chat are calling a cake a sugar sandwich, which
a cake is a sugar sandwich. That's accurate. But this is what Leslie made. It was this like gorgeous cake. We joked Marissa doesn't like carrot cake, so we said we were going to get her a carrot cake. So this is like a yellow cake decorated with carrots. And then this is my like sad little flat cake that just went like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. We ended up, here's how bad this cake was. We ended up throwing it away.
Oh no.
Which, like, I don't throw away food, especially junk food. Like, I will eat it even if it's mediocre. This was bad. It was bad.
Did you use salt instead of sugar or something?
I don't know what I swear to God I followed the recipe, but it just like it didn't inflate. It was like dense and kind of like, I don't know, I overheated the chocolate, so the chocolate got all weird and like grainy, and it was all bad. The whole thing was bad. Anyways, we
can get back to coding now.
Why did I bring up my shame cake? I shouldn't have done that. Now I'm sad. Okay.
Wait, didn't you make a cast iron pizza?
I did. That on the other hand was awesome. I will have to redeem myself.
So I got the inspiration from you. I saw that. I'm like, ooh, I've been thinking about that. And I also made a cast iron pizza from
this recipe. I think it's Adam Ragusa or Ragusia cast iron pizza. This recipe is very, very straightforward. And like it's not super hard to make, and it is absolutely delightful. Like, it's so good. I would highly recommend give that one a try. Let me actually put this in. I'll put this in the show notes. All right. So yes, that cast iron pizza though,
yes.
It's the truth. Like, you should do it.
I recommend it. It wasn't that hard. The proving takes a while, but it's actually fun. And like, What else are we doing? You got nothing else going on. I know you don't. So
exactly.
All right, back to our service worker.
I swear to God, we're gonna write one complete service worker during this episode.
If we're ever somehow like, if I'm applying to work for a company that you work for, or vice versa, they're gonna watch this episode and be like, "Those two are never allowed to work together." It took them 90 minutes to write.
Opposite ends.
We have 24 lines of code. Yeah.
All right.
Yes. All right. So at this point, we're saying, okay, if it's a GET request that we intercepted, we're going to respond with something. So what we want to do is we actually want to respond with a request. So I'm just going to say fetch and the request. So all that's going to do is respond with the results from originally the request.
Right.
Like, well,
and so if we're thinking about this in terms of like what the network is actually doing. So when I type a URL into the browser, we're sending off to a server. We're saying, hey, browser, I would like to get, so you use the GET request. I would like to get this resource, which is a file name. And then the server would like interpret that request, go retrieve that file, and then send it back to the browser, which will display it. So what we're doing here is we're kind of mimicking that behavior where we're saying, oh, if it's a GET request, we're going to send whatever the result of that request is. So right now it's kind of like it's a no-op. The browser will do this for us. So it's not super meaningful that we're doing just this, but this is where service workers start to get powerful. So what do you want to do next?
Well, that was well put, and essentially, yes, you're 100% correct. Not essentially, you are correct. We're doing superfluous work here. Like we're not actually doing anything. The power is going to come in here. So we're going to say .catch, and we'll give it a function and an error. Actually, we're probably going to do anything with the error, so I'm going to leave that off for now. So this means that, actually, that's right. If there's an error getting this request, so the internet's down or the server's down, we want to handle it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where all the magic comes in. So we want to return. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is we want to return the offline page. So to do that, the first thing we have to do is open the cache. So go back to our caches, caches.open. And then we're going to say, oops, that's a then, and then we'll give it another function. Then we have the cache. So this is just like above. And in an ideal case, we would just offload this to a function that's like, give me something for the cache. Like we were saying earlier, I know this is confusing, but if we took, say, like opening a cache and then returning a cache, we just offload it to a function, you'd have this boilerplate built out and you'd be pretty familiar with how caches work. But for now, I don't know if I want to fix these spaces. They're really annoying me. Anyway.
If I can just do a save and it'll auto format. This is gonna go chaos. Get ready. Ooh. Okay, there we go. Did that make it worse? Now
no. I'm just gonna. It's just like easier to read, especially if you're writing like in RxJS or something like that. You start chaining things, or you're doing a lot of array methods. I find it easier. Some people don't. Teach their own. I prefer readability over quick one-liners.
Yeah, I agree.
If I'm being honest, but anyways, so in the cache, we want to look up the closest thing. We want to look up the file we want. So we're going to say cache.match, and we'll say, what do we call it? Offline.html.
Yeah,
we did. And that's it. So what we did was we said, hey, make the request normal. It should just be a transparent proxy. But if there's any sort of error at all, it's not very elegant in our error handling, but if there's any error at all, open the cache, get our offline.html page, and then return that page.
Do we need to return this cache.match?
Do we? Oh, yeah. This is why I'm a terrible engineer. Yes,
hey,
we need to actually return
eventually.
something at the end of the day. I know. Maybe another 10 years will actually earn my senior title.
Okay. So if we save this, then this should be working, right?
Yeah. Look, it'll work for now. We just need to add one more line, and we'll be totally.
This pan pizza recipe is sponsored by.
Stop helping. All right, Squarespace.
Funny enough, I sent my wife this pizza recipe, and she's like, "Did you send me a Squarespace ad?" Legitimately, I'm like, "No, sponsored by Squarespace."
Okay, so something that'll be interesting here is we just changed our service worker. So watch what happens here when I refresh the page. See how it just did all that? And now we've got another one in here that is waiting to activate. So I can like click this button to fix it. So now we're like running the most recent version, which is very cool. So then if I go to offline and I refresh the page, I'm just going to click this. Ooh, didn't work. Okay. All right. So then what happens?
We did something wrong.
Did we respond with? Did our offline ever actually register, do you think? Does it show up in
Should
here?
have.
Where do you? Here's our offline HTML.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it just needed to
Let's,
like load once before we did that.
service workers are tricky.
So let's go offline. No.
But why would it load? Let me check out offline HTML. No, that's right.
If we go to offline HTML. Okay, so the page works. Oh. Hold on. Is it doing what was that? Why is it not doing the .html? Are you this is like
That's weird.
it's I think it's the serve module being awkward. Let's try instead of serve, let's use npx http server, which I think does less helpful stuff. So it should be on 8080. Okay, so now that's not helping anymore. And if we go to the home page, right, here's our service worker. So let's go offline. Okay, so it was the serve module was dropping our .html. So if we get rid of the extra help from the server, it does what we expect. So now we're offline, and when we try to go to our home page, it shows us our offline HTML. And then if I go back online, reload, there's our button. It works.
Exactly. And that's, granted, this was a very simple example, and it's not a particularly elegant offline page. In fact, if I were a user and I was on your site, it was like, you're offline. I'm like, cool. But it's a great place to put in like your Twitter links or different status pages, things like that. Just like telling the user, here's what's happening. We think you're offline or the server's offline. Just help them out. This is for the user after all. But there's one last step I want to throw in there, and it's because we had to go into our Chrome DevTools and then manually update the service worker to say like, hey, I want you to take over from the previous one. We can fix that, which I'm going to hack this out. Technically, you should do it somewhere else, but actually, I'll do it in here, like a gentleman. No, I'll do it out here.
I wish I need like a monocle for that particular moment, like a gentleman. Just switch out like to a monocle.
That's how I code all the time. That's how I read pull requests. I'm like, good variable naming.
Indeed, indubitably.
But we can skip that step. We can say self, which is the worker itself. We can say skip waiting. And that way, every time we add a new service worker, it's automatically going to take over from the previous one.
And when I reload, it's immediately to 11:15. And like, when would you not want this? Like, this is actually something I'm curious about. Like, at what point would you not want to skip waiting and immediately use the new service worker?
Great. That's a great question. One, generally don't do this. I'm doing this as an example, but you want the skip waiting as part of the install step of when the install step's actually done, or the heavy lifting that you're doing. So for this example, we're just getting a file locally, offline.html in the files array, and we're just loading it up, and it's pretty fast. It's probably at most a kilobyte or two, something like that. But if you had actual libraries you want to load up, or if you want to do some sort of processing of data, or if you had, generally, if it's an offline page, you're going to probably load up, I don't know, React and a bunch of other things that you want to serve out to the client. At that point, you actually want to wait for the request to go out and then load up the files into the cache, and then you want to skip waiting because you don't want to take advantage, or you don't want to come in early. So because I'm just doing this.
So the reasoning for that is that when you hit this page, the first time that someone loads it, it's going to actually block doing anything until it completes all that work. Is that right?
The service, it won't block because it's in a worker, but the service worker won't work. So if you have any sort of like on-demand functionality you need it to happen right off the bat, it won't work until that service worker is done installing.
Right, so like if we had a proxy in place, like it literally wouldn't respond until it finished doing that work. So it would like have to download all that stuff first. So our page would be kind of unresponsive on the first use. So that would be why you skip. So when you skip waiting, then what's happening is like I've got the old service worker and then I load the page and then in the background it does all that work. And then the next time I reload, it's already got that work finished. So it's like there's no delay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we're just shortcutting all of that with the self-test skip waiting because we know that the opening the cache and then loading the cache or loading the offline.html to the cache is going to be fairly instantaneous for as far as we're concerned. But that's a good point. Generally, you don't want to do this because you'll end up in a weird state where the service worker install step could be half done or not even done at all. And then you're expecting some functionality and it's just, now you're way off the rails.
Sure.
You don't want to do that.
There's a question from the chat.
Yeah.
So with a site that has many pages that people might enter from, so like a blog or something, you would have to load the service worker on every page. Is that right?
Great question. Whoever asked that.
AVH4.
AVH4, great question. No, we didn't talk about it, but service workers have this idea of scope, which is for certain URLs or certain domains, you can have one service worker for, I don't know, say /Jason's beard. You can have a different service worker for /Jem's beard. And you can give the service worker a scope. So it's saying on this page, you take over. On this page, this other service worker takes over. Because we didn't give it a scope, the service worker automatically inherits everything down from the root scope. So right now we're just on localhost / and we put a service worker there. So it's automatically going to intercept every single request on every page underneath.
But then we would still need, like, on any potential entry page, we would still need to do the navigator register.
Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, so this would basically be like if you you can throw this into your bundle, honestly. Like if you're using a bundler, if you're not using a bundler, you can throw it into like your footer script that just gets shared across all pages, and just make sure that you include the service worker everywhere. But the other thing to consider is that, like, in most cases, like until you hit an edge case, you will most likely want this service worker to be in the web root, like at yoursite.com/sw.js, because it can't go up. It can only go down. So if you load it at like sw.js/asset/sw.js or whatever, you're going to end up with a situation where like your service worker doesn't work because it's only got access to the /assets route. So you do have to, like, you can't put it in your JavaScript folder. You can't put it in your assets folder. It's got to be at web root, which is kind of uncomfortable the first time you do it, but it's for all the reasons that Jem just said. Like it's the scope is controlled. It's a security measure, right? Because otherwise I could go on like, what's a website that gives you your own sub URL? Like like old school MySpace, right? Like myspace.com/jlangsdorf. If I could install a service worker there, I could go up and take over the whole MySpace site. So it's a security measure to make sure that you're only allowed to control the scope that you actually have access to, and not able to like step up further in the chain.
Yeah, well explained. We didn't touch on security, but that is a good point. Service worker is only one on HTTPS, so that means you need to have a certificate on your site if you're going to install one. And actually, it's funny. I think we all missed this because I don't know, the web moves so fast. But most of the modern cool stuff, like service workers and audio workers, things like that, you can only do on HCPS because of security, and because this is persistent running in the background. If someone managed to man in the middle and install a service worker, who knows what they could do? They can sniff out all your traffic. They can, I don't know. They can do very malicious things.
That's the evil service worker we were talking about. Like you do not want to. Okay. So, but yeah. So like, and the other thing that's fun here is like, let's maybe do one that we've got like 5 minutes here. Do you think that we could have our service worker like pre-process? Like if I put some, like, let's say, like, can we have our service worker fix that text?
Yeah, I think we can. This one I'll have to look up.
I'd have to look it up too.
For my quick research, I mean, yes, we can obviously do that. We'd have to take the response from the fetch event, convert it into a blob,
Convert it
and
into a
then iterate
blob.
over that. Yeah,
Does this look
it's
like?
converted to a blob is a real format. I guess people don't know that. What do you think? Yes, a blob is a real format. You have to every request coming in is like nothing. It's it. I won't say stateless, but it doesn't mean anything to the browser. So you have to convert it to something that the browser knows how to handle. Those are generally blobs, and depending on the type of request and the response you're getting, it's a different type of blob. Whatever. We convert it to a blob, and then we can iterate over that blob to change things out
Okay.
dynamically.
So if I
I don't know if we
want,
can do that 5 minutes, but
can we do it in 5 minutes? We might be able to do it in 5 minutes.
look up exactly how to iterate a blob. It's the senior engineer part.
Mm-hmm.
Fetch. Modify response. Go.
There's so much.
This is where the real coding is.
I know, right? Just silence and like slightly squint at the screen, like what is happening?
I wonder if I have an example somewhere. I actually just wrote a service worker that does something useful for my actual job. Let me pull it up.
I swear to God, I did something useful.
I swear I use these in real life.
Okay, so if I go in here, then oh, it doesn't actually log out a full request. Request.body. Oh, geez, there's a lot in here.
Let's see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, it would end up in the dot then, and then you would get your response. And then what? You would like. What does that look like? Nothing. It looks like nothing. Might be temporarily down. Did I just break my whole thing? Oh no.
What was it saying? Unknown word?
Oh, that's I have a thing to be helpful that is it's like a spell checker, but it's not super helpful because, spell checkers don't actually work very well.
I was gonna say I've seen spell checkers in code before, and they tend not to work well. Maybe in no, it's in comments, but no, because you can give weird variable names.
Okay, there we go. So that's what I was trying to do, was just log out this response, but my console log isn't working for any number of reasons. Probably the most likely one is that whatever this is isn't actually loggable. Or it's being replaced. Oh, look at that. It gets like pulled out, which is awesome. How do I get this to persist? Preserve log. Okay, so I get a readable stream. All right, this is clearly not going to happen within the context of how much time we have here. What if I just want to convert it into text and then mess with it?
Too much. So I have. Let me see if I can send you this example. Let's see, where is my GitHub page? So I have an example of doing this, but there we go, live transpile. I'm going to send it to you on, send it to you over Twitter.
Okay. Is this something, do you mind if I show this?
Oh yeah, go ahead. My secrets.
Okay, so this.
Yeah, you got it. Got it. So this was just a proof of concept I wrote a long time ago. And what it is it transpiles your JavaScript code into ES6 code, or should other way around, on the fly. So why would you do this and not do it on the server? Whatever. I don't know your reasonings. I'm not you. But what this does is any JavaScript coming down, it checks it and says like, hey, I'm going to transform this using Babel, and then I'm going to serve that to the client. So the client's getting ES5 code, which is cool. Pretty awesome. Okay. And it's just doing it on the fly.
Yeah, that's super cool. So I mean, this mostly looks like what I was expecting. So you're taking the request, and then we read it out as a blob. That was the part that I was not doing. And then once we get that response, we can just kind of like do stuff with it, which is pretty cool. So that's actually pretty exciting because I wonder, do you think it works if I just do like a dot then get my response and then I'll do like response.html? There's no way that's just going to work, right?
Oh, let's find out.
No, it hates that. Absolutely unwilling to entertain that idea. Okay.
Well, you never know. You don't know till you try, and it costs us nothing to try.
Yeah. But this is cool. Like you can see here that we are getting like, here's our response. We get a body. The body's a readable stream. And so we can kind of get in here and start to dig around. The thing that I thought we were going to do that would be funny, it turns out it's actually a decent amount of work. And with that, I think this is where we want to kind of draw this to a close. So I think let's pull this part out. Okay. So Jem, for anyone who wants to follow up with you or follow up on this, are there any additional resources that you want to point people to, or places you want them to find you online?
You can find me online on Twitter at Jem Young, on GitHub on Young. I don't know why people follow me on GitHub. I never do anything interesting. Follow Jason instead. Much more fascinating character. Seriously, stop following me on GitHub. I don't do anything. But I'm on Twitter at Jem Young. Honestly, for Service Worker, I use Google Developers. It's pretty strong write-up. Not to diss Mozilla, because it's one of my favorite companies. But some of the resources on Service Workers are a bit pedantic. As in, like, they do things that are probably necessary, but if you're just learning them, they're probably not the best way to go.
Gotcha.
But they're probably more advanced. So there is, I think it's serviceworker.rs or service.work.
Service.work?
Servicework.rs.
Whoa, what is this? Service. Wow, what right. buttons am I pushing right now? Service, work.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Worker. So it's an E. Servicework, E.rs.
Oh,
yeah, since today we learned that .rs is a top level domain.
Nice.
Don't know.
That's cool. All right. So this is great. Like, and like, keep in mind, service workers, they're super powerful. They can be a bit of a foot gun. So make sure that you're careful when you're developing, that you're not trying to like optimize everything or catch every response. Like only catch the thing you mean to catch and be very deliberate about that, because otherwise you probably will find yourself with reports of a broken website or people who are super confused. And remember, if you install a service worker on somebody's site, they have to uninstall it. You can't fix that for them. So you do need to be just be careful, right? There are ways that you can have your website uninstall, but like they'll have to reload a couple times for that to kick in. So it can be a little tricky. Just be careful. They're super powerful, great power, great responsibility, all those things. Jem, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a blast.
Thanks for having me, Jason. This was the most fun I've had since the last episode of Great Canadian Baking Show. So
high praise. So chat, thank you so much for hanging out today. We have some fun stuff coming up. Make sure that you check the schedule on the site. We have on June 2nd, we've got Charlie coming back. We had some issues. The computers rebelled when we were trying to do mind control, but we beat them into shape. We're ready to go. We're going to come back and do that episode again. So mark your calendars, make sure you subscribe and keep in touch. With that being said, stay tuned. We are going to raid. And Jem, thank you one more time. We'll see you next time, y'all.
Thanks, Jason.